Sharm el-Sheikh should open new routes to Britain in September. That's planned if everything goes well for the security agency. And on the other hand, they're also looking at new markets like Bulgaria, Poland, Latin America, China, and India.
So Gregory, taking a look at innovation in the tourism sector, virtual reality has actually come out as being a new innovation. So can you talk us through how it's being used?
Sure. I mean, it's becoming much more accessible now because the virtual reality headsets are not mainstream yet, but they will be to some extent at the end of the year. We have the Samsung Gear VR, which is built out of the same technology as the Facebook Oculus Rift, which needs a computer still to work with it. But I mean, there's things are getting really almost mainstream. By the end of the year, we'll see many more people using them. And the way you can use it is it's actually teleporting you into your destination. So it can be used, instead of looking for hours on websites for your next travel destination, a 5 or 10 minute immersive experience with virtual reality will really help you enhance the experience and enhance your wanting to travel to that destination. And so basically will convince people to travel more, hopefully. And 2/3 of actually Americans say today already that they will be influenced, they should be influenced by virtual reality to make their decisions for the next trip. So basically making their short list for their next trip. And already 13% of people that do virtual reality tours that have experienced them say they're planning their trip at that destination.
Wow, so it's definitely an immediate effect that it has on consumers then.
It does.
So the UK does suffer from price competitiveness to other locations and other cities in Europe. So taking a look at the coming up Brexit, if the UK does leave the EU, what implications could that have on the UK tourism sector?
Sure. Well, there's two sides to the story, as always, and in this case particularly. But the side I would prefer most, in my preference, is the side that UK tourism probably will suffer, because there is a great dependency not only of EU tourism. It's about 73% of the market in the UK from foreign visitors is from the EU. But there's also business tourism, which accounts to about 25% of the total spend in the UK. And people look at the fact that if the global headquarters move their headquarters out of the UK and move their international conferences out of the UK, there might be less business travel to the UK for that reason. There might be also less travelers going to the UK tourism-wise as well, because the tourism seats, the cheaper seats, are kind of like paid for by the business travelers. So if there's less business travelers, then there'll be probably more expensive seats going to Britain. So the overall inbound travel will suffer. But the UK travel at the other end can go both ways. So basically the UK tourism is 25 billion spend in the UK, so far more than the 4.5 billion from the 4 big European countries or the 3.5 billion from the US. So 25 billion is of course the big part. But of course you can see UK travelers, if they prefer, because of the weaker pound, probably the weaker pound, they will not travel as much maybe abroad, but they still might travel abroad and then thus do less short trips in Britain, and do more, keep their money for during their trips abroad. So tourism in Britain, which is 3.8 million jobs, could suffer from that alone and from the business aspect as well. So that's what I foresee.
And you mentioned the jobs that will suffer there, so also taking a look at Egypt. So Egypt has had extremely detrimental effects on their travel tourism sector at the moment, and tourism sector makes up around 12% of the workforce in Egypt. So is that past the point of revival at the moment?
Very much so. Unfortunately, there was the top point of tourism in Egypt was 2010, about 14.7 million visitors. That went down to 7.2 million in 2014 and 6.1 million in 2015. And now we're looking at 4 to 5 million at best in 2016. Of course, mainly because of the Russian airline crash in late October last year. Partly, we still don't know the effects of the latest crash that happened from Paris to Cairo, the Egypt Air crash. Those effects are not known yet. But of course, the effects are great. There's 3 million jobs in depending on tourism in Egypt. Actually, even 3.8 million jobs, sorry, and 900,000 of those are hotel jobs, and 60% of those jobs were lost after 2010. along the years. But of course, the Arab Spring did not affect tourism as bad as the Russian airliner crash, which affected it much more. And so we also see that they are the only way they're trying to counter that is they have a British security agency that's looking at checking all the airports to make sure that that can be securized and securitized, and that the British and Russian planes can come back, because for the moment they've cancelled most of their flights to Egypt. And Sharm el-Sheikh should open new routes to Britain in September. That's planned if everything goes well for the security agency. And on the other hand, they're also looking at new markets like Bulgaria, Poland, Latin America, China, and India to counter the effect of the massive 70 or 80% of tourists that came from the European Union.
Wow, well, Gregory, thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your insights.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
That's all for myself and Gregory, but if you did like this video, do like and comment on dukascopy.tv.